Now, today on the internet, predominantly when you are viewing content that is promoted or curated by very complicated AI algorithms, while other content is either shadow banned or completely censored. And really, predominantly, our experience on the internet right now is pretty much filled with messages from megacorporations, the mainstream media, and of course, government-approved messages. The internet used to be a place where if you would subscribe to something, you would want to see something, you would actually see it, which gave the rise of independent creators that were not connected to big money or, of course, any government at all. Well, I think it's pretty clear that that is not the case anymore. And the last voice, the last major opposition that the people have against this destruction of free speech in the public square, against the ramming of propaganda and just trash down our throats by these special interests, our last way to express our dissent against that crap forced on us, well, that is being taken away from us, will soon be gone, unless, of course, we do something about it. And that, of course, is, quote, being ratioed, which I will explain what it means later in this video. But most importantly, what I wanted to get into in this video is your ability to express yourself being taken away from you by some of the biggest players online. Now, before we start, wanted to thank everyone who is joining us on Subscribestar. On subscribestar.com/wearechange. The link will be in the description because it is mainly you guys that are keeping us running as a free and independent news organization. And also, Subscribestar is also, in my opinion, the ethical alternative to, of course, Patreon. Now, I think, quote, being ratioed is a very important aspect in our new online digital public sphere that we're all involved in because it helps a lot of people, usually mainly people in power, face the reality of situations that they usually, of course, wouldn't see in their own delusion of grandeur. Now, of course, other people criticize being ratioed as mob mentality and something that allegedly creates, quote, hate mobs, which, of course, I totally disagree with. Now, as an example of being ratioed, we, of course, have the governor of Virginia, who, of course, promoted a bill to get rid of abortion restrictions in Virginia, a very controversial bill that, along with the governor's own statements, many people took as the endorsement of infanticide. And with that controversy, one of Ralph's old friends got his yearbook out and publicly released photos of the governor in blackface, with another person wearing a Ku Klux Klan hood. And with these photos coming out, as well as the abortion comments, a lot of people on the left and right want this governor to step down, which he's refusing to, and that's why they're expressing their concern with, of course, ratioing him. And as you could see on his public Twitter account, he has a lot of responses and very little likes compared to that. And that's why ratioed by Urban Dictionary means being revealed, quote, as an idiot on Twitter by having a high ratio of comments to likes and retweets. To me, this is the people's public opinion and one way of expressing it, which I think is important. But big monopoly tech companies are, of course, looking to get rid of it completely. Previously, even Twitter, just 4 months ago, publicly talked about how they are wanting to get rid of the like button, and as of today, we're seeing extremely biased and very incorrect headlines, like this one from The Verge, saying that, quote, YouTube wants, quote, dislike mobs to stop weaponizing the dislike button. Going on to say, one option is to do away with it altogether, which of course made me respond by saying that this is just, quote, monopoly technocratic multinational corporations seeking to silence the last possible way for people to stand up against the propaganda and disinformation they shove down your throats. Sorry, going all Alex Jones there for a little bit, but that is my opinion, and I will add evidence to support it in this video. And I think it's pretty clear, but the argument does have to be made, is that a lot of billionaire technocrats, especially in Silicon Valley, do personally curate and push specific algorithms that promote special interests, while of course censoring other voices that they do not like. This is an extreme power, especially in what people consider a public utility, a public square of conversation, where people, for an example, go to on Twitter to literally hear news from the president. This is where we all discuss things. And for these powers to be controlled by a few individuals, there surely is going to be some corruption, which there already is a lot of examples of, with not only, of course, right-wing voices being censored, but also voices that are enemies of the greater geopolitical goals of the United States, like we saw in Syria, like we're seeing right now in Venezuela, being shut down by a lot of these bigger companies, including Twitter themselves. Previously, even YouTube banning Syrian government accounts of their side of the story on YouTube. And at the same time, a lot of anti-establishment, anti-war critics that also have been permanently banned without even an explanation to why important voices in our civil discourse are just being completely shut down. And it's not just a left-wing mafia that, Breitbart accuses of doing all this. It's far more bigger than just that. But time and time again, we're seeing channels just demonetized, if not censored or shadow banned or just completely deleted by YouTube, while, of course, rigging the system, rigging the game in the favor of what they deem, quote, authoritative voices, which is really just the mainstream media that carries weights and lies for mass corporations and governments. We've seen it time and time again to very detrimental effects, not only just the Iraq war, but I could just keep going on and on, just about that single aspect alone. And that's why when we do very important, very dangerous, risky on-the-ground reporting, you're never going to be able to find it in the search algorithms, even if you type in "We Are Change" and, for an example, Paris or Yellow Vests that we have covered on the ground, garnered millions of views around, popular views with people sharing videos organically. You're not going to see those show up in the search algorithm. You're going to see, of course, lower ranked, more disliked, less engaged videos promoted by, of course, YouTube, which come from CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News and their authoritative branch that they seem more... For some reason, with their record, YouTube still sees them the preferred supposed news outlet to shove towards you, when again, people are, by and large, literally moving away from the crap that these corporatist, globalist, boot-licking, authoritarian statists try to push on us. People are rejecting it. Like, no. We want to hear actual voices. People without special interest. People who represent the voices of actual people on the ground, not, of course, filtered through this bull crap. And sadly, YouTube is doing the opposite to it, which is exemplified with, of course, this latest step to get rid of any voice that rejects that. 2, they're getting rid of comment sections on, of course, major media websites like NPR, CNN, and of course there's many arguments to why this is happening, but in my opinion, of course, it's to stop people calling them out on their lies. Special interests have an extreme unfair advantage to the system that we're all a part of on the internet, especially with known, already admitted use of social media platforms by governments, whether it's the American government, the Israeli government, the Russian government, that admittedly hires trolls in order to influence people on social media. Now, of course, some of this is being discussed by, of course, Russia doing this with their bots and allegedly interfering in elections, but it's admitted that the United States and Israel does this, as well as other governments, but that issue is never addressed or made a bigger issue out of or even talked about, but does legitimately happen and does influence people's opinions with, of course, the psychological-based influence techniques where people are paid by the government to sit down and talk trash against voices that go against the U.S. government, trying to, of course, influence everyone watching to think, oh yeah, this person criticizing the government, he's either a big nose, Putin lookalike, totally wrong, he's a conspiracy theorist, no, he's a left-wing communist, no, a right-wing fascist teabagger. Again, just total slander and disinformation campaigns that are totally fine on big social media networks that no one even talks about. And this happens so many times, like we even saw with Amazon removing 1-star reviews from, of course, Hillary Clinton's new book. So I think already it's pretty clear that our voices are being limited, are being censored, are being downranked, are being shadow banned, are being completely deleted by, of course, for the benefit of special interest, with one hand washing the other of course, very powerful people, very rich people who, of course, are protecting themselves and doing each other favors, screwing you over. So this is why I don't buy the fact that mainstream media journalists and YouTube are saying that the dislike button is a, quote, weapon for supposed dislike mobs. And I'm sorry, I don't completely buy it, especially if you look at the fact at the #1 disliked video, which of course was the very politically charged and biased YouTube Rewind of 2018, which received 15.9 million dislikes. A video made by YouTube on its own YouTube platform is now the #1 most disliked video on its entire platform. Of course, second to an annoying Justin Bieber song, third to Jake Paul, and of course with Logan Paul are pretty much the idols that YouTube was promoting to us, and with their specialized algorithm and with, of course, Disney connections, pushed him to the forefront of the fame and popularity that he is at now. The fourth video is, of course, PewDiePie, with a video saying, quote, "Can this video get 1 million dislikes?" And it did. It got 3.9. Now, the other examples of being ratioed that I think is important to bring up is, of course, the Gillette commercial that received 1.3 million dislike on a video that just came out a few days ago, which again was very racially, sexually, and politically biased in, of course, one direction, which people by and large rejected. And then, of course, the latest example that just happened a few moments ago is, of course, about the Oprah for Men, Joe Rogan himself, who just had the CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, on his podcast, which has received over 50,000 dislikes for what people are criticizing as a very soft-handed interview with a technocratic billionaire that is banning and censoring people because of their political speech and catering, of course, to bigger government requests and shutting down opposition voices, especially in the recent case of Venezuela, from the public hearing their side of the story. When Joe Rogan makes the argument that everyone should have a platform, everyone should have an open voice, everyone should be able to discuss their differences, and that he shouldn't be criticized because he had Jack Dorsey on, I completely agree with his argument. The problem for a lot of people is that he, supposedly who believes in that, did not stand up for that against one of the biggest egregious actors in the space of deplatforming people. That was the gripe and why there were so many people that disliked this video, as well as the fact that Joe Rogan has been sponsored by the Cash App, which is an actual business which is founded by Jack Dorsey. And let's be honest here, even with some of the comments and some people debating that maybe the comments were deleted and weren't deleted, it was predominantly the like-to-dislike ratio, which is prompting a response by Joe Rogan, who is even going on the record saying right now, saying that Jack Dorsey will actually be back on the Joe Rogan podcast now to actually talk about the topic of censorship and deplatforming, which he hopes could lead to a road of redemption for the people who are being banned, and responding back to the people who are critical of him with, of course, more dialogue. And hey, I think that's awesome and important, and I think we do need to have these bigger discussions, and I think the public's voice is extremely important when it comes to holding powerful people, powerful corporations accountable. One way we do that is, of course, with ratioing people. This is why platforms like Reddit are as prominent and as important as they are, because they give people the ability to upvote and downvote the content that they like or dislike, even though that platform in itself is also facing a lot of criticism regarding censorship and the deplatforming of people that they also disagree with. And sometimes it's not easy to admit that you're wrong. It's embarrassing for a lot of people who are usually powerful to admit, like, hey, yeah, I didn't get it right here. And it's okay. People make mistakes all the time, but ratioing, in my opinion, is a way to hold people accountable to that, especially the very powerful. And good on for Joe Rogan for facing that, admitting that, and trying to do the right thing, as well as all the other people who have done the right thing in the past because of the people's voice. And even with all of that, to conclude, I could be completely wrong, but if I am, you guys will, of course, let me know in the comment section below. And also, of course, with the like and dislike ratio, which I honestly hope never goes away. And if you believe in that, share this video and try to get this message out to the larger public, because honestly, with the way things are going, before we know it, it's not going to exist anymore. So yeah, while we still are here, thank you so much for watching this video and sticking with me for so long. I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for a lot more here on youtube.com/we are change.